Hello everyone, my name is Martin Brown and I'm the illustrator of the Horrible Histories books. And I'm here today to talk to you as part of this year's wonderful Shakespeare Week celebrations. And I'm also helping to curate the online exhibition, Boils, Plague Sores and Embossed Carbuncles. It's an investigation into health and well-being and medicine in Shakespeare's time. And that had some fairly horrible history involved with it right from the start. Medicine and doctoring was different in those days. You might use a feather to draw out some poison from a sore, or you might carry around a dead toad in a little bag around your neck to ward away disease. See, doctors thought about medicine in entirely different ways than the way we do today. They thought that the four humours, the four elements, cold, dry, hot and wet, influenced your health. If they were out of balance, those four things, then you got sick. And of course, there were lots of ways to investigate those illnesses. One way was to study someone's pee. If you were sick, you got to pee into a bottle and the doctor would check it. This isn't pee, by the way. You would have a little bottle and the doctors would have charts with colours and information on them to show that the sort of thing you were looking for, the sort of thing you were looking at, would mean something to the doctor. So the first thing they do, though, they check the colour, a nice yellow. They'd look that up, and then they'd have a smell and see what that, then they'd look that up and see what that meant, and they would taste it as well, of course. Fizzy and slightly appley. Probably just as well since it's apple ties. But see, that's medicine in Shakespearean times. Truly horrible, I'm sure that you'll agree. And as illustrator of the Horrible Histories, I've got to draw that horrible stuff. All through history, I've had to draw all sorts of disease and grimness. So as the illustrator of the Horrible Histories, it's probably time that I talk about illustration. So the first thing I need is a subject. Maybe we should choose something from the online exhibition, something medicinal, something from Shakespeare's time. How about a plague doctor? A plague doctor is someone who came around the village, came around the town, helping for looking for plague victims. Plague came to Stratford-upon-Avon the year Shakespeare was born, so we knew that that was part of his life. So, first things first, I'll need a figure. I'll need the basis for my plague doctor. Now, I start all my Horrible Histories drawings with a pencil. I just rough them up, I get all the shapes in place, I get all the details in place, and then I will go over them with ink. It's drawing it twice, I suppose, but I just want to make sure that everything's not in the right place, but just how I want it. It's not about being right or wrong. It's just if I want someone's hand up there, then I want to make sure that's where it is. So with a pencil, I can rub it out if it's not, where I want it to be. Now, I'm going to start with a figure. Now, this isn't tricky. It might look like I know what I'm doing, but this is stuff that everyone can do. Now, for example, I know that you can draw a stick figure. Except that pencil's not going to show up, so I'm going to change to something that will. There we go, I'm going to use this orange. Right, now I know you can do that, okay? Because everyone can, of course they can. But it's not that much harder to change the stick figure into a box figure. So instead of this stick body, you have a box, an oblong about 2 squares tall. Okay, that's not hard. And then you've sort of got the points there, shoulders and hips. So from the shoulders, you can drop down a line, and the hands are sort of more or less in line with the bottom of the box. The elbows are halfway down the arms, and also sort of line up with your waist. You can try that yourself. Try that, your belly button's there, your elbows right in the middle. So when you're drawing a human figure, just remember that some of these things are handily placed for you to remember where they go. Legs, slightly longer than the box. And feet can be triangles or just lines, however you like. So look, there we are. There's knees in the middle. There's our box man. And it's already more proportionally like a character that we can put clothes on than a stick figure. See, it's hard to put clothes on a stick figure because it's got no shape. Where here, the body shape's already there. You see? It's just a little step towards building a figure that's a little bit more like us. So I'm going to start my plague doctor with a box man or box figure. Head, neck, box, shoulders, hips, legs, feet. And so the center line is slightly to the side. You can almost imagine the box has a side to it, a 3D box. So he's facing this way slightly. So you've got the arm. I'm going to have him holding a stick because I use the stick to go around and knock on doors and poke sick people with, because you don't want to touch them, do you? Right, so look, there's the basis, there's the framework for our plague doctor. So now it's just a question of building up some of the detail. Now, plague doctors wore a lot of protective clothing. They might look strange to us, but this is just PPE. They thought that the plague was carried around by bad air, bad smells. So to combat the bad smells and the bad air, they would try to surround themselves with good air and nice smells. So the doctors would wear a hood. There are references that have the head covered completely in a hood, or maybe just a mask, as in this case. And there'd be something like a cone or a beak sitting in the front of their faces, which would be full of lavender, which would give them a nice smell, would give them good air. So they'd be constantly breathing the good stuff rather than the bad stuff. So we need a hood, and also, of course, be hatted, just because everybody was, and it was a sign of their station in life. Doctors wore doctory hats. There's that cone or the beak, big eye holes so that they could see where they were going. And the hooded cape part over the shoulders. And this is all a bit scribbly, and this is pencil. So what I'd be usually doing is rubbing out the bits that I don't need. But I'm designing my picture before I commit to ink. Okay, the sleeves are quite wide. The sleeves here would gather probably because the gravity would pull the sleeves down if it's loose. A hand holding a stick. They'd be gloved as part of their protection. Now, hands are tricky, and I'll come back to those later on. But this is pencil. See, this is where I might rub this out and tweak it a bit because it's a bit of a mess there to look at. There's the bottom of the glove. The stick. And you don't have to worry too much about the legs. In this case, the legs are there almost just to give you the pose. See, it's great when they're just standing still, but you can make your boxman do anything. You could make them funny shoes. You can make them run. You can make them sit and think if you want to. Oh, the pen's running out. So the great thing about these is you could make them do much more than a stick character. But in this case, the legs are covered. So I've got my pose. And you don't see the legs. If you're running, you know, in shorts, of course, you see the legs, but in this case, it's all covered up. So there's, you'd see some fingers sticking at the bottom there. So there is my pencil of a plague doctor. Now, if I'm happy with that, then I could go on to ink. There'd probably be some folds in his coat that I'd want to pick out. Okay, if I'm happy with that, now I can go to ink. It's just a question of going over that pencil line. Now this pen is probably a little bit too thick. Usually I'd use something much, much finer. Of course, the drawings are much, much smaller for the Horrible Histories. I would use something like this, an Edding 1800. Very, very fine, but you'd never see it up here. So, sleeve, I can ignore the guidelines you see underneath. Big wide sleeves, maybe a fold or two on the coat coming down, fingers poking out. Shoes. This foot is slightly turned towards you, so it's got a different shape to this one. This one's side on. This one's pointing a little bit in your direction. Gloves. Hand. Fingers. Stick. So that's my basic line work for the Plague Doctor. Now, if you wanted to, you could colour it in at this stage. After this is dry, I would very carefully rub out all that pencil, just leaving the ink by itself. And so you could colour that if you wanted to. But if it's a black and white Horrible Histories drawing, then I would just add tone by using, well, it's sort of colouring in with black, but you can colour it in such a way that it's not solid. It's called cross-hatching. And that way you can have a tonal effect. I forgot the pupils. You can have shadow. You can add a bit of texture. And maybe colour in the stick a little bit. The inside of the sleeve. But possibly you'd want to colour the coat entirely or give it a tone. And that's just a case of very carefully, it's very quick, You can make it look as if it's dark or grey or black. A little bit of detail on the gloves, possibly. There we are. If you wanted to darken it even more, you just cross-hatch in the other direction. And there we are. We have a plague doctor. It's pretty quick. A drawing like this might take me a few hours, usually. And something like this actually features in the online exhibition, as they say in the classics. Here's one I did earlier. That's much finer, and you can't really see it properly, but you get the idea. It's a joke about PPE, of course, because if this is normal, a cone full of lavender, if you're an intensive care doctor, of course you would need a bigger cone with more lavender, surely. So that's how I draw. That's how a horrible history drawing happens. But there's nothing sort of magical about this. I mean, I've been doing it a while, but what's always confused me a little bit is how people say, I can't draw. I said hands are tricky before. I said I'll come back to hands. They are. Hands are hard to do. They're full of curves and angles, and every time you move them, they're in an entirely different position. That is so different to this. One thing to do is to get yourself a prop. A pen would do. And you can see what shape your hand makes when it's doing the thing you want it to do. You know, a fist holding a staff. Or from that side, in this case, you can see how the thumb actually covers up that first finger almost entirely. And the other fingers wrap around. And so you don't really see much of the hand apart from this lumpy bit here by the thumb and the bottom of the palm here. So you've got a thumb wrapping around and fingers there. And yeah, it's fiddly, and it is tricky. It really is. But if you can't draw hands, it doesn't mean that you can't draw. All it means is that drawing hands is difficult. If you can't hit a hole in one at golf, it doesn't mean you're bad at golf. It means that hitting a hole in one is hard. If you can't beat Lewis Hamilton in a road race, it doesn't mean that you're bad at driving. It just means beating Lewis Hamilton is tricky. But we're so hard on ourselves. You know, we're drawing a horse and it doesn't look exactly like a horse. We say things like, I can't draw, which is clearly rubbish. Everyone can draw. Everyone can draw like everyone can walk and talk. I mean, obviously there are some people who can do neither of those things, but most of us can. And there are some people who can do it really, really well. And that's the thing. There are some of us who can draw really, really well. But everybody can still draw. And what's more, I can prove it to you. I'm going to draw some more faces. I'll draw a face. There we go. I think you could do that. I reckon you could draw that. I think you could probably draw that. I think you could probably draw that. And chances are with a little bit of practice, you could draw something like that. He's got big hair. So if you can draw this, you can draw that. And if you can draw that, you can draw that. If you can draw that, then you can draw that. It's all drawing. None of this is different. None of this is not drawing. If you wanted to draw something like that, you can. You can learn how. There's no one on the planet who hasn't got the skills to learn this. No one is born able to play tennis or play a musical instrument. No one's born with a trumpet in their hand. You've got to learn that stuff. You've got to learn how to hold a violin and know what to do with your fingers, or the correct way to hold a tennis racket, or to drive a Formula One car. That's learnable things to do. And it's the same with drawing. I taught myself how to draw with how to draw books. I wasn't born with some sort of special drawing arm. Okay? And what's more, I don't even draw this way. I mean, I can if I want to. But my drawings, my Horrible Histories drawings are like this. There you go. This is what I do. Now, you can learn how to draw well if you want to, or draw more realistically, I should say, if you want to, but you don't have to. Some of the finest and most successful illustrators in the world don't draw realistically. I mean, look at the incomparable Axel Scheffler's work. You know, it's not a realistic picture of a horse or a rat. I'm fairly sure rats aren't 4 foot tall, wearing clothes and carrying weapons. At least I hope not. But isn't it wonderful? Isn't it a superb drawing? It's not a realistic drawing. I say, don't be too hard on yourself if your horse doesn't look like a horse. This world is hard enough sometimes without you being hard on you as well. When Shakespeare said, "To thine own self be true," he was talking about you being truthful about yourself. You can draw. You can do anything. Don't tell yourself you can't do stuff when you can. It might take a bit of learning or a bit of patience or a bit of practice, but it's all there. It's all possible. So don't give yourself a hard time. Just relax. Draw like this. This is what I do. And have a go. Why don't you draw something and maybe send it in to the competition for Shakespeare Week. To thine own self be true. Have a go. Thank you so much. It has been an absolute joy being part of the Shakespeare Week. I hope to see you in person one of these days. But until then, have fun. Have a brilliant time drawing. Thank you so much. And hopefully see you soon.